Lipstick on the DND sign. Night has a different gravity in a hotel. The lobby plants exhale, the marble floor loses its headlines, and the crystal chandelier above the registration desk hums like a polite planet. I like the hour when the cocktail dresses have migrated upstairs, and the ice machine's complaints become the loudest thing on the third floor. That's when the building feels like it belongs to the people who keep it standing. I walk the service corridors in my suit that knows my shoulders, slide a keycard down a reader for the pleasure of a competent green light, feel the warm breath of the laundry through its swinging doors, and listen. I am the night manager of the Halcyon, a five-star that pretends to have no past. They hired me because I know how to be invisible and useful at the same time. My name is Leo. If I'm doing my job right, you'll forget it and still feel safer. I can tell you which rooms have thermostats that lie, which elevator will sneeze before it quits, and which guests fold towels to apologize for the mess they made. I carry a tiny notebook and a pocket full of apologies that sound like solutions. Maya called the Halcyon a nest when she was feeling generous and a trap when she was. She wrote about travel for a magazine that still has the vanity to print itself. She liked the way I smelled of starch and late. In the early days, she'd come to the bar after deadlines and sit with me on the employee staircase between service calls. I learned the heat behind her knee that made her laugh, the angle of her jaw that wanted kisses without asking for them. She loved the invisibility of my job because it let her be seen. We were excellent at beginnings. We forgot to practice middles. It's possible to know someone's life by learning their noises. I knew what Maya's apartment sounded like when she was happy, the clink of a spoon against a bowl, a song that wandered into the bathroom with her, the zipper of the garment bag she kept packed more from temperament than necessity. I also learned the silence of deceit, which is sneaky, a quiet so careful it glows. One morning she came by the Halcyon to borrow my spare key, her hair new in a way that didn't require scissors. She hugged me hello, and I smelled something fruit-lush under her usual sandalwood, a black cherry gloss that didn't belong to her. On our counter at home later, there was a room service receipt tucked into the pages of a book, grilled peaches and a half bottle of champagne charged to a press rate I recognized as one of ours. I filed it in my pocket and told myself I still believed in coincidence. You shouldn't date someone who can see a life through a keyhole. You shouldn't be someone who looks through keyholes just because you can. I stacked towels with the housekeepers to wear out my suspicion, refilled the minibar of a room that had hosted a proposal 10 hours earlier, walked a couple to their door when the man's hand shook too much to aim the card. The Halcyon tells me every secret guests think they're saying quietly. A lipstick print on a DND sign, a cufflink catching the daylight from under a chair, two champagne flutes when the reservation says one. It makes you humble, or it makes you arrogant. I tried for the first and failed toward the second. Tried honesty like a new menu. We're not monks, Maya said in that voice she used when talking herself into a spicier dish. We work nights, we fly, we live in rooms with key cards. Desire roams around like a bored cat. It's not about owning it, it's about not letting it scratch up the furniture. She sat on our rug cross-legged and drew imaginary boxes in the air. No one from your staff or mine, no one in our bed. We say things before, not after. No humiliations. And the us. We protect that. She reached for me then, eyes intact, mouth impatient, and I wanted to believe a treaty could civilize a storm. I wanted to be sophisticated enough to pretend rivers are polite if you give them a map. I said yes. We sealed it with my palms on her ribs, with her breath against my neck, with a decision I hoped my bones could respect in the morning. On Thursdays, the Halcyon hosts a jazz set to loosen the grip of suits that don't know how to be off-duty. That's how Norse slid into my life. Her voice a slow burn, her hair gathered in the back like secrecy, a satin dress that didn't so much cling as remember. She sang, "The nearness of you," like she was measuring a room. After her last set, she wandered to the front desk at the hour when only night and people who owe it something are awake. "I heard you have a good view somewhere," she said, soft, as if the hotel were a person she didn't want to startle. "We have several," I said. "Most of them are for the guests." "And one for the manager," she said. "That's how these stories go." She didn't flirt like someone asking for a discount. She flirted like a person who respects an open door and knocks anyway. I liked her immediately for how she handled her glass, by the stem, attentive. I took her to the roof. The pool is closed at midnight. The city thinks better in blue lights. Nor crossed her arms against the little wind and stood with her shoulder just touching my arm. "If you write about me later, don't say I was gallant. Say I know the temperature people need." She smelled of something smoky with a stubborn citrus under it, like a peel someone had warmed in their hands. "Is it always this quiet?" she asked. "Only when it is," I said, and she smiled like I'd passed a test. We didn't kiss that night. We stood close enough to call it a preface and watched a plane lift itself into a sky where no one is honest and everyone is trying. When she left, she pressed her mouth to my cheek and stayed a beat longer than necessary. The place she'd touched hummed crowds into silence. I leaned on the railing and told the pool it was a better listener than I was. I'd like to say I told Maya about Nor right away. It would be cleaner. I learned long ago that cleanliness is a trick you play with lighting. I waited 2 days. Then I said Nor's name like I was introducing someone to my mother, and I watched Maya's face refuse to betray its learning. She nodded the nod you give a stewardess when the turbulence isn't that bad. "Before," she said, to collect her treaty's due. "You did good." "Do you want me to stop?" I asked. She licked her lower lip, an old habit that means she's writing copy in her head. "I want you not to humiliate me," she said, and the word us was too tired to show up. Nor's sets became part of the Halcyon's rhythm. She'd sing like she knew what she didn't want to say, then let the room think that was intimacy. After, she'd lean on my desk and tell me about theaters in cities with good bread and terrible sound systems. I told her about wedding parties that blow in like weather, about dogs smuggled in suitcases, about how certain rooms demand forgiveness, and how the plumbing in 512 regrets itself. I didn't tell her about the night I saw Maya step out of an elevator with a man wearing a suit I recognized by its stitching. He was the kind of guest who tastes the wine like a performance of being alive. He had the self-esteem of a chair with its own biography. They walked not touching but tuned to each other's frequency, and when Maya met my eyes, she performed surprise like someone good at auditions. She texted me an hour later. "I should have warned you. It was just dinner." Before, not after, I wrote back and deleted it. I'm good at not making scenes. That's my job. When the faucet breaks at 3, when the chandelier winks out a line of bulbs like a bad smile, when a man in the lobby cries into his phone, I don't add drama. I make sure the ice machine stops screaming. I make sure a hand finds a shoulder that won't flinch. So when the Halcyon hosted an art gala and the lobby turned into a chandelier parade, I wore the expression of someone who knows where the breaker panel is and will forgive you if you don't. Maya arrived with a dress that understood how to be worshipped, and the man with the tailored suit. Nor sang on a small stage by the bar, and her eyes found me like a glass finds light. It was a room that had learned to say everything without risking a verb. Closer to midnight, after tips and hands and apologies, I took Nor back to the roof. She looked at me as if I were a question she intended to answer later. "We can still not be stupid," she said. "Define stupid," I said, meaning define faithful, define brave, define enough. She put her finger against my mouth, not to hush me but to see if I'd accept the hush. I did. When she kissed me, it was like stepping into the exact temperature of a bath drawn by a person who understands you. Slow, certain, the patience of someone who knows endings and isn't scared by starts. I felt my own body shift toward softness, toward honesty, toward something I didn't have a name for when all my life had been a glossary of polite words and emergency exits. Her hands settled at my waist and held me there, and the city leaned back to give us room. We touched the way good musicians listen harder than they play. When her lips left mine, the night tasted of chlorinated water and oranges. She smiled like someone finishing a difficult sentence. The linen room loves lovers. No one thinks to look there at 2 in the morning. It's full of clean promises and the hum of machines that know how to make something right after someone else has wrinkled it. We didn't do anything the fire code wouldn't forgive. We kissed with urgency and then with care. I learned the sound Nor makes when my mouth finds the hollow below her ear. She learned that if she presses her palm at the base of my spine, I forget other people exist. I won't write instructions here. I'll tell you the room smelled of lemon and the kind of heat that never asks for apologies. I'll tell you that when her dress fell soft around her ankles, I forgot about treaties written by tired mouths. Later, I took a white towel and dabbed her lipstick from my chin. She laughed in my throat. "I like that red on you," she said. "I'll put it on the DND sign," I said, and she shook her head and kissed me hush again. Maya and I separated the next week. That's too quick for a sentence to carry, but the truth is sometimes unceremonious. We sat on our couch and held hands like people practicing a goodbye we didn't want to humiliate with a fight. She had slept with the man. She had enjoyed it. She had enjoyed being chosen by a person who lives like a magazine spread. "It's not because you weren't enough," she said, and I said I can't remove myself from your equation just because you think math is impersonal. We didn't break plates, we divided books. She took the ones with landscapes and spines that remember her. I kept the messy poets and the cookbook stained by a stew we ruined together. She left me a note, folded small, with 3 words, "Be good, Leo." I hope she meant something more complicated than that. Nor didn't move into the space Maya left. She's too sensible for that, and I'm too stubborn about my ghosts. She brought a plant I tried not to kill, and a record we played on my terrible turntable until the scratching became charming. Some nights she arrived with her voice bruised by too many requests and slept on my chest like I was furniture. Some nights we kissed against my fridge and made the magneted takeout menus quiver. On quieter nights she sat on the reception desk while I balanced the night audit, her feet in my lap, my thumb making slow circles that said, "I see you, I see you." One dawn a guest knocked at the desk who had waited too long to stop hurting. He wanted a room at 6 in the morning and a reason to try again by noon. He wore no tie and the exhausted courage of people who decided to live in the past 3 minutes. I gave him water and a room with west light. I told him checkout wasn't a religion. When he left 2 days later, he shook my hand like I'd taught him a magic trick. Maybe I had. The halcyon does that. It makes you believe in vanishes and returns. Maya sent a photo from a city with a river and men who iron their napkins. She looked gorgeous. She looked like herself, unembarrassed by the work of it. I wrote back, "You were always the best thing in the room." She sent a laughing emoji, which is modern for gratitude. I hope she keeps her heart away from elevators. If you ever pass the halcyon late, you might see the ghost light through the skylight and the shape of a man with a notebook making a list that isn't really a list. Loose ends and beginnings, and the names of guests who liked the red wine from Sicily more than they expected to. I'll be the one turning off the lights in the order the building prefers. Second floor hallway first, then the pool, then the chandelier, letting it cool like a throat after a long song. Nor will flick my ear on the way past the bar and lean against the door while I lock it. We'll walk under the canopy where mornings begin uniformly and nights end in uneven pieces. Sometimes I trace the outline of her lipstick on the pad of my thumb and think of a DND sign and a treaty that worked only until our bodies reminded us how they tell the truth. The hotel has taught me a lot. People do not fail because they lack elegance. They fail because they are brave at the wrong hour and polite at the wrong temperature. Keycards don't really open doors. A hand does, or it doesn't. I'm still learning the difference between secrecy and privacy, between being decent and being good. When Nora and I climb to the roof and the pool is glass and the sky is a dark hallway with no guests in it, she wraps her arm around my waist and I rest my chin in her hair, and I realize the simplest magic trick in the world. Appear where you are and resist the urge to vanish. The rest is housekeeping.